How's it going, folks? Welcome back to another Think With Me Thursday today. I'm Justin here at Effective. We don't really have a ton planned out for this stream today, so I figured we would just spend a little time diving through Obsidian, answering your questions, hopefully uncovering some interesting thoughts, maybe some interesting things that we're thinking about or learning about or wondering about today in the PKM and productivity world. There's a poll, if you're joining right now, there's a poll on YouTube here in the chat, just kind of wondering what kinds of content do you find the most valuable here on our channel? Is it our PKM deep dives? Is it looking into productivity tips? Or is it looking at app tutorials, or maybe it's all of it? I'd love to hear from you in the chat and in the poll if you want to share your input there. But yeah, it's been really kind of an interesting day today. I did something I don't usually do, which was I got out on my mountain bike at like 7:30 this morning. I don't usually go out for a ride that early. And I can tell why I don't go out for a ride that early all that often, because what ended up happening is my brain was just not fully woken up yet. And being out on the trail like that, you kind of got to be locked in to some degree with what you're doing. Unfortunately, I took a pretty rough crash today and totally banged up my leg. I'm all right, but I'm kind of elevating it now and kind of navigating through that. So that's been the interesting journey of my day today. Hopefully you're having a great day where you are. But for now, I think I'm just going to pop open my Obsidian vault and just start working on some stuff. If you have any questions or anything along the way, go ahead and pop them in the chat. We'll talk about them intermittently throughout. But for now, we're just going to get into it, see how it goes. Before we do that, though, because you're joining today, I wanted to encourage you with something that we're doing new here at Effective, and that's our weekly newsletter called Toolbox Tips. You can head on over to thinkeffective.co/join to get access to our weekly newsletter. Basically, you're going to get a productivity tip condensed into a short, condensed area, just a little bit of text, not a lot of fluff, plus some updates about what we've been doing with our content and interesting resources you might find helpful, all in a weekly newsletter. So head on over to thinkeffective.co/join. Plus, you get access to all of our free guides as a result of that membership. You can find it on the guides page on the site as well once you're signed up. Would love to have you be a part of that. All right. So like I mentioned, I don't really have a plan for this today, and I'm just going to dig in, see where this takes us. I've got a few note areas that I've been working on. We've talked about this in the past, where these are kind of the current high-level interesting notes here. Another thing, too, is that I've been working on this life management system over here. Maybe we'll take a look at that today. Let me know if you want to take a look at anything in particular inside of my vault, if I can share it with you. For now, I'm just going to do a little exploring, see what we run across. Probably start here. Actually, I'll probably start here. My inbox tag is usually the best place to get going if there's something that I want to just process on a little bit. I've been reading a lot on community management lately. What did I pull out of this article? Yeah. Nothing crazy. I'm gonna dig into this here. Just to find it out a bit. Collector's Fallacy is something that I have been digging into a little bit. I am, as part of the Obsidian Made Simple version 2, welcome Dragon Dust. Welcome to the stream. As part of our Obsidian Made Simple version 2 course that I'm doing with Francesco D'Alessio of Keep Productive, I'm doing a module titled Intro to PKM. And one of the videos that's part of that is the downsides of personal knowledge management, some ways that you can bolster yourself to handle that and deal with it. The collector's fallacy is one of them. If you're not familiar with what the collector's fallacy is, it's an idea consolidated by Christian Tizzi from the Zettelkasten method website, zettelkasten.de. So if you're interested in checking that article out, I'll put a link in the chat for you. But this is an interesting thing because he tends to talk about the collector's fallacy as gathering knowledge, gathering information, just to know something, to know about something. But he makes this distinction that to know something is different from, or to know about something is different from knowing something. Knowing about something is essentially akin to being able to recite a fact about that thing, whereas to know something means that something about you changed as a result of encountering that idea, that information, whatever it might be. And so it's really easy to fall into the trap of the collector's fallacy. If I just have more knowledge, then, well, that makes me a better person, or that changes my life in some way. That's not often the case. And a lot of ways our Greek thought-oriented, linear Western culture has valued the collection of knowledge that if you just know the right things, your life will be better. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. You have to encounter that information, wrestle with it, and then be changed by it in some way for there to be a real change. So I guess to summarize my thoughts on the collector's fallacy, I'm going to open this up as a permanent note. I don't need a self-linking note there. There we go. Summarize my thoughts on that. Knowing about something. Then knowing something. To know about something is to recite facts. To know something is to be changed by that knowledge. The collector's fallacy is gathering information to recite it or have it available, thinking its value comes in its collection. The true value of information really comes in from its ability to change our lives. We have to acquire, wrestle with, and integrate information in our lives for it to truly become knowledge. It's the same, in my mind, it's the same, it's in the same vein as if you were to say, I read 100 books on climbing Mount Everest, but have never actually climbed Mount Everest. You could exclaim that you are an expert of Mount Everest at that point. But would you truly know Mount Everest until you climbed it? You know, that information, that knowledge has no practical use in your life because you haven't gone anywhere near that place. And it can be the same with, like, for example, business. I mean, for a lot of years, I have accumulated knowledge about business and ideas and how to approach different aspects of business. But to truly put the pedal to the metal, to get your feet on the road, that's when that becomes knowledge. Before, it's just information that you've gathered. It has value to some degree, but it doesn't necessarily have inherent value to your life. Let's put it that way. And so the collector's fallacy is just raising awareness of the difference between knowing about something and knowing something. All right. Well, that's fun. I'm going to dive into this note here because aliases, PKM. Might need to put those in quotes too. Just want to make sure that this becomes the root note for all things like that, because it's easy to, you know, when things have abbreviations or other terms for it, I like to be able to put an alias inside of Obsidian so that when I search for it, for example, coming over here, this is all related to the same node here, personal knowledge management, but it's just an alias for it, so it doesn't really matter. I'll probably just put the capital version instead of the lowercase one because it seems not to really care about case sensitivity. But it might. Yeah, there we go. Cool. Well, that'll work. I also think I need to figure out too with Readwise is to get topic areas taken care of. So that comes in more automatically. I have so many varied things in here. Let's try something different. I am just going to pick a random spot in here. I mean, that's a random, but so the other thing that, okay, this note drew my attention for whatever reason. And one thing I'm connecting this with here, I know it's connected through deep work because I've connected these ideas quite a bit in the past. Solitude. There's also an element of solitude being important to recharge your brain. For scatter focus. If you haven't read Chris Bailey's book, Hyperfocus, definitely recommend it. I think his idea of hyperfocus and scatter focus kind of being these two modes that your brain gets into, I guess. I think it's really helpful to understand that because hyperfocus is akin to deep work. You're focusing really only on one thing. You've pushed all the other items out of this attentional space in your brain, and you're focusing on that one thing. I think a lot of us get that, and we understand the value of that. But what I think there's a challenge with for some of us, that it's been difficult to grab the value of and understand how it fits in, is intentional scatter focus time. Scatter focus is when you intentionally let your mind wander. You basically allow whatever your brain wants to put in that attentional space in there. You have natural scatter focus times like sleep. When you're dreaming, when you're resting, your brain kind of goes into this scatter focus mode. When you do a weekly review and a mind sweep, if you do that side of getting things done, I think there's a lot of that's kind of a scatter focus time as well. But I think solitude is a time that's required for that as well. So solitude is not just for deep work. And I think this is one of the things that can get a little tricky when it comes to productivity and creative work advice. There's been such a heavy emphasis on the output, but there's not a lot of emphasis on the early stages of a process. Sometimes you need to go through a scatter focus phase where your brain is unwinding ideas and making connections. Because what happens in scatter focus is your brain makes connections between different ideas. I think scatter focus is actually one of the key modes of your brain to actually be creative. And I mean, it's really complementary to a PKM system like this, because you're just following whatever threads your brain is finding interesting, and it's doing it just internal to your brain. And so I think I'm going to figure out how to add this to my vault here. I'm going to just open up a couple of these notes. Yeah, so I'm just going to link it here. Solitude is necessary for scatter focus. That note. Deep work. Scatter focus. We'll just start there. Because because is freeing your mind from outside inputs. There are two modes of thought, or modes you can engage in that place. First is deep work, or as Chris Bailey terms it, hyperfocus. And then it's scatter focus. See, required to think creatively. Scatter focus is the undervalued of the two, but is just as important. In scatter focus, your brain unwinds, unpacks, and connects ideas together. And it allows for greater mental health. We'll use that as a link. Solitude adds to your mental and emotional health. We'll just do a link alias there. In Obsidian, if you put a bracket after the actual note name in the link, it will display with the text that follows. And so it can just allow links to appear a little bit more naturally inside of a note, which is really handy. So anyway, like, yeah, really what I'm trying to get at here is that I think Solitude is really important for not only deep work, because you can't really do deep work without eliminating outside inputs, but you also can't really get to a quality place of scatter focus even for 20-30 minutes, which is about all your brain needs sometimes, without Solitude. So overall, I mean, in my opinion, yeah, we all need people. Yes, we all need relationships, but we all need solitude too. And unfortunately, one of the things that seems to be happening is that solitude seems to be diminishing in our world. You know, just because we're connected all the time. We've got phones in our hands and social media, emails, phone calls, Zoom calls, live streams like this. We're constantly connected with others, and that's not a bad thing. But I think actually one of these, yeah, I mentioned it here, that I believe overstimulation is one of the major causes of anxiety for many, though not all people. We live in an age where we are constantly connected, but in a shallow way. When we can engage with solitude in meaningful ways, I think overstimulation can diminish, because what I haven't researched this, I'll be honest with you, but kind of my gut feeling for a lot of this is that I think overstimulation happens when we have so much information that we're consuming and we don't have this solitude, scatter focus type place to process through all of it, or we don't have space in our day. I mean, and solitude can look like just sitting. It can look like going for a walk. It can look like, or what am I saying here? It can look like going for a walk. It can look like journaling. It can look like engaging with your PKM system, taking notes. But it's just really that place of however it finds most meaning for you and most value for you. It's really just finding that place where you can let your mind unwind and unload. And unfortunately, because we're so connected all of the time, I really think that we've forgotten the value of solitude, engaging it in a meaningful way. Let's see here. I think that's important probably to note down. Create a new note. Solitude can take many forms. Okay. Solitude doesn't have to mean just sitting alone. It can take many forms. Can mean taking a quiet walk. Can be going for a run even. Can look like journaling or taking notes in a PKM system. Yeah, Magical Cherubim. Having a coffee and sitting alone in front of Obsidian is one of the best things ever. I agree. Okay, let's get real here a little bit. Honestly, I have not been spending as much time outside of these live streams engaging with my Obsidian Vault, my PKM system. I've been clipping articles and I've been reading things and highlighting things for sure, but lately I haven't really been spending a lot of time. Speaking of coffee, by the way, I haven't been spending a lot of time engaging with my vault. I think these live streams are an excellent way to do so, but sometimes you also you can't just do everything in public, right? And so there's definitely a place for it, and building it into your schedule. Sometimes it's journaling, and some of it too, I guess, to think of it this way. I have the philosophy that a PKM system is really just an external thought workspace for your brain. It's not, I don't see it as a second brain, though that is a catchy name. I will have to give Tiago Forte that one. I don't see it that way. I just see it as an external thought workspace where my brain doesn't have to hold on to the thing and it can come back to it at some point in time, but really all the work's happening here. It's just that it allows my brain to process through things a little bit better. And so that what I'm trying to get at with that though is that this can happen in different places. It sometimes happens when I'm lounging in the pool, because I've got a little pool in the backyard, just a little inflatable one basically. I can go hang out in for a little while this summer, which has been great. In some cases though, it's sitting down with my notebook. I have a couple different notebooks. I've got one that's more of a bullet journal format, and one that's a larger square Rhodia notebook that I literally use as like kind of my portable whiteboard, where it's just anything and everything can go in it. It just having the different there, like one more structured, one more unstructured, really helps me engage with it better. But sometimes I just can't do stuff sitting at a computer. Sometimes I just get burned out sitting in front of a screen, and so I need to be able to process through ideas still, and I need a place to do that. And so instead of using Obsidian or Miro or something like that, I'm using paper, or maybe I'm just talking it out somewhere as I'm walking. And so, yeah, I guess just to say, embrace your PKM system, but don't be afraid to get outside of it too. There are seasons and times where, sure, you might be taking a ton of notes inside of Obsidian, but if there's a time period where you don't take a lot of notes, that's okay too. Don't feel the pressure on it. But just being real with you, I just haven't been using it as much recently. Not that I'm not using it, because I am. And I do feel like Obsidian is the place for me to take notes in a digital format, because it just makes sense with the way that I think and work. But it's not like I feel like I have to put everything in my life inside of there. And I think that's something relatively important to keep in mind when you're building a PKM system. All right, so we've got this permanent note here. Yeah, exercise, journaling. Oh, apparently I haven't done that. This one doesn't really have a specific reference, but I do need to figure out how I'm going to link it here. Notion versus Obsidian. Yeah, Nicholas, I'll get to that in just a second. Let me finish this one note here, because I've got some interesting thoughts on this that you might be interested in figuring out. Yeah, and Josh, your question about mem. We'll take a look at that too. This might be on the topic of solitude. This might be interesting, but maybe not completely solitudinal. I just made that word up. But I love getting out and going mountain biking because it's one of the only physical activities that I can do. I just get totally zoned in on it. There's literally nothing else going on inside of my brain while I'm riding a mountain bike trail. Yeah, so, all right, question time. Nicholas Jackson Art asks, hey man, can you talk about Notion versus Obsidian? Why, yes, I can. In my mind, Notion and Obsidian have two main differences. Obsidian is more an unstructured workspace for your thoughts. Think linking your ideas together in a multitude of different ways, and it's very writing based, long form based. So if you create ideas through writing, or you're trying to learn things and create those things into new things, such as YouTube videos or articles, podcasts, things of that sort, a PKM system inside of Obsidian can be really beneficial. Notion, on the other hand, I really see that as being a structured type of workspace. This is information like processes, checklists, project management, content calendars, wikis, things of that sort that might be beneficial for your house, yourself, or your business, because Notion just is structured this way. It's a page that you can restructure and move things around. It's really easy to use. And so the way that I think about Notion, because I use both of them actually, I use Obsidian for my PKM system. These are the raw, unstructured thoughts that I have. And they're in there. And I can mix them up, work with them like we have been doing today so far. I have different types of notes that I create inside of here. I have notes on solitude. I have notes on marketing, community management, running a small business. I have notes on productivity and PKM, burnout and health, all sorts of different topics. I have journaling that happens in here. I have literally anything free form with my mind happens inside of Obsidian. I then use Notion to take the work that I've been doing inside of Obsidian for those ideas and kind of turn it into something. And so my primary use for Notion right now is running the content calendar for Effective. So I write all of my newsletters inside of there because I have some nice templates that I can use. I can make sure I have a schedule, because having a calendar laid out list of where things are happening and when they need to happen is really helps me to make sure that I stay on track. Obsidian, you can do it, but you kind of have to hack it in. And so Notion on this side, I think really does that structured information really well. Plus, like if you're starting some kind of a consulting business, or you need to track statuses of projects or assign things out to other people, or like I have done with Francesco at Keep Productive with our Obsidian Made Simple course version 2 that's coming up soon. I shared out a whole page with him about course outline and updates, so that since he's hosting the course, he can make the changes in the learning management system for that once I get him the videos, which I have done, and they're all done. So they're coming really soon. I'm really excited about that. So that's kind of how I think about Notion and Obsidian. I love using Obsidian as my space to explore. And then Notion is my space to execute on kind of a higher level for some certain things. Now, I have been experimenting with using Obsidian as more of a personal project manager, but I'm going to toy around with that a little bit more. The reason I've been drawn to Obsidian for that is because it allows me to use like direct links, URL scheme links that allow me to just dive right into a specific project inside of, say, Things 3, which is the task manager that I'm using right now. And so it allows me to do that. Notion doesn't. You have to do some funky stuff with that to get that to work. Like you have to maybe use Bitly to redirect a URL just to be able to paste it in there, because Notion doesn't allow you to use those kinds of links. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Nicholas. Let me know if there's anything more specific you want to talk about, but I think both are awesome tools. It just depends on what you're using it for. All right, Josh Williams says, random question. What's your thoughts on the application Mem over Obsidian? All right, well, let's pull it up. You know what's really interesting? I honestly really haven't looked into Mem that much. So here we go. That was kind of a weird redirect flow. Goodbye to folders. Self-organizing workspace. Mem's the easiest way to capture, share, and make use of knowledge. Okay. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, Alex, I have been seeing Francesco pushing Mem. I think he really likes it. But I'm with you. Like, looking at this, I'm like, what do I do with this? For whatever reason, when I first started using Obsidian, it just clicked and it made sense. And then I just had to figure out a couple different like linking schemes and things like that. I think this is really interesting. One, having worked in marketing, to be able to put these big name logos up here: Netflix, Airbnb, Uber, Wix, ByteDance, Anderson Horowitz. What, like, how can you put these logos up here? Like, do you actually have agreements with these people to say, yeah, I'm going to promote your brand on my website? Some companies don't care. But there's some real interesting trademark stuff. Oh, interesting, Alex. When you sign up, they make you tell them who you work for. Maybe they have something in their terms of service that say you're giving them permission to do that. Yikes. That's kind of shady, I think. MemX AI. Okay. All right. So here's something interesting. What are your guys' thoughts on AI becoming such a big part of like tooling like this? I'm not sure what I think about this yet. I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts? Or what are you excited about with it? What are you concerned about with it? I think there's some potential, but I'm not convinced yet that AI is the right way to do this. All right, so fastest way to capture anything. Yeah, well, I think this is the promise of just about every productivity app. Okay. We're getting a little critical here today. One key press to save any web page. Okay. Jotted on the go with iOS app or SMS. All right, SMS is an interesting strategy. I got to give them that. Powered by AI. Okay. Search the way you think. Natural language search. Okay, that's a powerful feature to be able to use natural language style searches as long as it works well. And then collaboration. Yeah, I mean, this is the business model these days. You don't create an app anymore, it seems like, to be able to like actually, I don't know, for one person. Everything is collaborative, and then the individuals are the ones who kind of get the free tier where, you know, yeah, I don't know. Product-led growth, man. More breakthroughs, less back and forth. Okay, that's a big promise. Calendar integration, file attachments, user groups, Zapier integration, task management, imports, native apps, flows. All right, they got a lot of Twitter posts there, apparently. Social proof. All right, I'm just poking around here to try to understand what they're trying to do. Oh, the memo is their blog. Did you get the memo? Yeah, I mean, it's not having actually dove in and used it all that much. It seems interesting. It just seems like another app that's trying to ride the wave of PKM apps that are out there, unfortunately. It doesn't seem, I mean, it seems like it's got a unique value proposition, try to organize information without you having to do it yourself. That's probably one of the biggest challenges with Notion and Obsidian and really any other note app is, how do I organize this? Some people, they don't take as many notes, and so having a single flow of notes like you do in Apple Notes or Bear makes sense for them, or you have light tagging or things like that. But what I would get a little concerned about with this is just what Alex is saying right now. Mem is so structure resistant that it's difficult to conceptualize. Virtually every other notes app has at least some structural navigation on the homepage. Yeah, I would get concerned that relevant notes would get lost somewhere in here because I wouldn't have a way to contextualize it myself. I really think that there is something to having, a way to organize things. Hemanth, I see your question about Vim experience in Obsidian. I'll get back to that in just a second here, just so you're aware. I'm going to read through some of the chat here because there's been a lot of discussion since I've been talking through this. Alex said, recently gave Mem a real try and there were just too many issues to get it into production in my system. Josh says, so far I'm using Obsidian, but I had to go at Mem. I like the quick launch functionality at the moment when browsing the web and things. Kind of feels like Obsidian mixed with Notion. That's kind of a cool take on it. I mean, if it can take off in that way, I think that's a really interesting place to be in the middle, where if you need some light structure and some light PKM style features, it seems like it could land nicely in the middle for that. They make you, let's see, MemX is the best part of Mem. They want to be a self-organizing system operating primarily by their presenting all linked and contextually related notes in a sidebar. Okay. Yeah, and as Josh is saying here, going back to that question about AI, Josh says, I think AI is just a tool that comes in handy with searches now and then. I don't think it will take over how you structure your notes. I think you're probably right on that. It's really good at trying to find relevancy, AI is. So, yeah, I think being able to have something try to organize all of your notes for you using AI, if that AI model is trained really well, it might be good. If it's not trained super well, it's going to be kind of a mess. I would get a little concerned without having structure that something would get kind of lost and it might not be as discoverable. I like how in Obsidian, there are ways to discover notes that might not be properly linked or to find little bits of information that might be stuck in a larger note, such as a highlight. You can use block references. You can use lots of different things. So taking a look at Mem here on the surface, it looks like an interesting tool. I would be interested to see how it actually performs in a team environment. But for me, just looking at it on the surface, having no organization on the surface other than tagging like that, I don't know. And which tags just really seem like buckets you can throw your notes in, and then it tries to handle all the other organization. It might be a little too much for me. But this is the PKM space. This is productivity. Everybody's brains work differently, and so for some folks, this might be a home run, and for others, it might not. He-Man says, what are your thoughts on improving Vim experience in Obsidian? I think the Vim experience in Obsidian kind of sucks, to be honest. If you're not familiar with Vim, it's a command line text editor that allows you to just stay largely on the keyboard to edit text. It's really fast. I think the tagline for Vim is, in some ways, is to edit text at the speed of thought. It's super fast to be able to do it command line, but having built out a command line system in Vim for coding in the past for different roles that I've had, I love it for that. But turning on Vim mode inside of Obsidian, it feels so kludgy. And so I guess even if there was just a way to make Vim mode feel more like the command line, would be so much nicer. Right now, Vim mode really feels like operating in Vim mode inside of VS Code, if you've ever used that. And so I don't really know if there's a way to do that, because essentially you're making a Vim mode inside of a browser, sadly. But yeah, or I guess maybe the most ideal way is to create some kind of a Vim plugin that would interface with your Obsidian notes near perfectly. You wouldn't have the plugins and things that you have inside of Obsidian, but if you could traverse those links, I know there are a few out there where you can kind of do that already. I can't remember the name of them, but if you wanted to use Vim and just pop into text-based notes for a while, that you could. But yeah, as of right now, to me, Vim mode inside of Obsidian, it lacks the polish, the feel, the speed, even the customizability that Vim has on the command line. I think that's what kind of draws me away from using it. It's just so much easier to click in through notes, especially in an interface that feels like it's designed to be interacted with a mouse. If you could do everything inside of Obsidian, here's an actual legit improvement idea. If you could actually do everything inside of Obsidian using Vim key bindings or other key bindings, which I know you can, you really have to customize it though. But if there was an out-of-the-box solution where you could do literally anything in Vim that way, or in Obsidian using key bindings like that, that would be great. Even use of like the leader key to be able to do lots of different commands inside of Obsidian, I think would really dramatically improve that overall. But again, it's a Vim emulation inside of a web browser, essentially. And so I just think the experience overall isn't going to be that great. Hopefully that hit on what you were looking for, He-Man. Nicholas, back to your thoughts on if you need to include Obsidian in your workflow. Let's talk about that for a second. Why would you want to include Obsidian in the work that you're doing? The number one reason, I think, is that if you have information that you're trying to learn, think through, and process on, and then therefore create something. To me, these three pieces, learn, think, and create, are the key concepts of the PKM process. I know there's lots of different ways to talk about PKM these days, but if you are trying to sort through ideas, if you're trying to big picture, get concepts, intellectual concepts, philosophical concepts, things that you're reading, things that you're learning, things that you're consuming, you want to take those ideas and do something with them more intentionally, then any kind of a PKM system is going to be beneficial. You can even build a PKM system like this inside of Notion. It's just going to look a little bit different. Ali Abdaal has something like this, Thomas Frank, and others do as well. And so I definitely recommend taking a look at some of their content, understand if Notion could work for you too. Readwise, I think, is an excellent addition in any PKM workflow. I'm a big fan of their app. And if you integrate it in, what's great about it is you can take highlights from articles on the web, Kindle highlights, and then it automatically imports them into your Obsidian vaults, your Notion, a Notion database, or even like LogSeq. There's tons of different integrations for it, Roam Research even too. So there's lots of ways to build a PKM system there, Nicholas. But if you really want to deal with something plain text, local to, those are the other reasons that I would move to Obsidian instead of having something inside of Notion. Notion is very cloud-based. It doesn't have very good offline support, so it can be really tricky to work with in that regard. Obsidian is fully local first, and it just syncs those files back and forth. Additionally, Obsidian is really great because it's plain text files, PDFs, images, audio recordings. Literally any standard file format will work inside of Obsidian. And if Obsidian somehow folds at some point in the future and it no longer functions, those files will still be accessible. And so those are the main advantages I would say that Obsidian has if you're wanting to build some kind of a PKM workflow. But you can use Notion. Lots of people use Notion as literally their everything bucket for just about everything in their life. And so August Bradley is another person who does this with his Obsidian OS, or not Obsidian, Notion OS, I think, or life management system. And so definitely check out his stuff too. It's a really deep rabbit hole to go down. So I will warn you in advance that that's a thing. Yeah. So let's catching up on chat here a little bit. Maybe I'll do a look at Mem one of these days, a video of it, sign up, just do a first look. I haven't done it. I know it's probably been around for a long time. I'm interested in taking a look at pricing here. Free, unlimited mems, tags, and templates, 25 megabyte file size per upload, 5 gigabyte total storage. All right. You do have to pay to get MEmX, self-organizing MEmX technology, unlimited upload file size, and 100 gigs of total storage. All right. In a lot of ways, this reminds me. Okay, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be interesting. Mem is a modern day Evernote. It's kind of how I'm positioning it in my mind. You've got a free tier that kind of restricts some access to features, minimal amounts of files that you can upload. You really don't get the key features that you really want. Like Evernote, you pay for Evernote because you want to get their OCR, right? That's like the key feature of Evernote. You just pop a document in there and it OCRs it almost perfectly. I love that about Evernote, and I don't use it anymore for lots of other reasons. But yeah, MEmX really seems to be like the Evernote premium subscription where you get access to this really cool feature that really kind of makes the application, and you get unlimited like file storage and things like that. So, but it seems like if Evernote were to be built in 2022, this is probably what it would be. It would probably be something like this, heavily built around collaboration, uses AI, and then allows you to just kind of throw notes into it and it takes care of it for you. Because otherwise Evernote is kind of kludgy to organize, right? So I'm wondering if the founders of Mem took a look at Evernote and said, we could make this better today. I think Evernote's biggest challenge is all the tech debt that they've had to undo. When you build an application like that over so many different years and do so many different things and different platforms in different ways, you accrue technical debt, is what it's called in the software engineering world. It's non-ideal patterns and implementations of how things are built. And so it takes you a long time, a lot of times, to pay that technical debt back. And so I'm sure this is part of the reason why it's taken Evernote forever to ship meaningful product updates. Just because they've had to undo all the junk that has accumulated over the last few years. Anyway, that's my little rant on Evernote today. I love it. I love Evernote. It's was my go-to note-taking app for years. But unfortunately, there were a few things that fell off the wagon for me. Number one was just the company. The company just got really weird for a while. It didn't really seem like it knew where it was going. It wasn't launching any new features. Every new update to the app was just, it felt tone deaf because the community, myself included, was like really looking for improvements in a certain direction. And the company was just like, yeah, okay, here, we're going to do this thing over here. We're going to sell you socks. And now looking today, like just about every company has socks that they sell. It's like, whatever, it's a brand thing. But at that time, it felt tone deaf to a lot of the community. Like, we're going to build this product line out. But in reality, because they weren't investing in their core app, I think it really caused some problems. The other thing with Evernote that really threw me off for a while there was just, I was using it for file storage. I was scanning in bills and other records and things like that, throwing it in there. I think Evernote is still an amazing solution for that. My one concern with it, though, is if you're throwing sensitive information to a cloud company like that, what kind of security do they have? What kind of protocols and procedures do they have for dealing with that? They have AI engines that are reading through your notes to learn how they can, pair up with other things. And so it just got to be a little loose for me to some degree. I've moved to DevonThink on Mac for some of that file storage, but even then, because it's only on my Mac, I don't really engage with it as much as I should. I loved the ease of use that Evernote brought because you can install it on any device. You can pop things in there from anywhere, from your phone, super easily. Scannable was like the app that I used for scanning stuff into Evernote, and it worked great. I mean, it was one of the first of its kind in a lot of regards. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just am kind of unfortunate. I haven't really found a good file storage solution since I got off of Evernote. And it's just the reality of the marketplace right there. DevonThink is amazing, but it's kind of a niche app, and it's really powerful, but you got to tend to it, too. You can't just throw stuff in there. Yeah. Nicholas says, I'm still stuck in Evernote and looking for a way out. Yeah, so I'm with you there. Totally with you there. I've gotten out of it. I guess one of the ways you can approach to it. No, Alex, I did. Sorry, I'll come back to that in a second. I'm getting distracted by chat here from my trains of thoughts. One way you could approach file management instead of Evernote is, I really think you can just do it in just a file system, like just create files and folders on your computer. You can use like Cryptomator or something like that to encrypt those files if you want to put them on Dropbox and you don't trust Dropbox with that info, if you have sensitive information there. That gets a little kludgy to deal with. DevonThink is a great alternative too, but it's really expensive, like extremely expensive. But it's really good. Comes with OCR and everything. And yeah, I agree with you, Nicholas. OCR. If you're not going to have quality OCR for a file system, I just don't think it works. DevonThink has great OCR, but it's kludgy. It feels kludgy, and like you have to pay $300 for the app to download it and use it on your Mac, and then you have to pay like another $30 a year subscription to access it on your iPhone. And it took them like 10 years to get the app updated to it. So it felt like it was actually on Mac OS 10, the later versions versus like Mac OS 10.1. So yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know. I haven't figured out a good solution for that. If somebody knows of a good file storage solution that is not DevonThink, but that also is relatively secure and has OCR baked in, I'm happy to hear from you. We'll talk about it on the stream. We'll talk about it on the channel. We'll take a look at it. Alex says, you might have seen Francesco told Tiago Forte in a video released yesterday that Mem will become the next Evernote. I haven't seen that yet, but I'll take a look at that. I figured there was some interesting takes coming through there for sure. They both have an interesting perspective on the productivity and PKM landscape. I do think that Mem could have the potential to become in that space. The thing is, you have in markets, you have like a first mover, and if you can first mover advantage. So Evernote, I think, really had. I mean, they were the first mover in that note taking, that cloud synced note taking space, and they knocked it out of the park to start with. It was such an interesting, innovative, useful application when they launched, however long ago that was, in the late 2000s. I used it, I think, starting in 2008, and I used it for a long time, probably till like 2014, 2015. And that's kind of when things started falling off the rails, and it's been a very long journey for them to get back on their feet. But what's tricky right now for apps in the PKM space, even apps like Mem, is that they don't have that first mover advantage anymore. The space is really well defined. And so for Mem to become an Evernote in the space, they have to seriously differentiate themselves from every other player, from Obsidian, from Rome Research, from DevonThink, from Notion. In my mind, Notion has become the Evernote of the space already. They've already taken it out. I don't know enough about Mem yet to really make a full call on that, but in my mind, Notion has already taken the competitive advantage there in the knowledge management ecosystem. It doesn't replace Evernote, so there's, I mean, maybe a hole there in that regard that somebody can come in and fill. But for what a lot of people are doing for taking notes and trying to be productive, like Notion kind of gobbles all of that up. So that's the thing about it all. Alex is mentions to Nicholas, found a mem very thought-provoking. It was my vacation muse. If nothing else, helped me realize that I wanted to structure some things differently in my craft system. Yeah, you know what? Okay, so I'll riff off of that just a second, Alex. There is some value in experimenting with different apps. You can see what that app does differently, and sometimes the different mindsets that an app takes to a problem, to solve that problem, can give you ideas to implement solutions. So for example, I'm going to take Rome Research and Obsidian. They hit in the same space, but they take two completely different attitudes towards doing it. Rome being the very, I'm an outliner, linked thought, very much want to be the collaborative workspace of the world, very idealistic. And Obsidian is very much the practical approach to that. Let's just use text files on the computer, create a little browser for them. It allows you to link them together and navigate them really easily, and then grow from there. Obsidian really has a long form approach, and because Rome is a really outline-based format, even Logseq, you could throw a sub in there. When you use one or the other, you start to think about PKM differently. And so I spent a couple of weeks experimenting with Logseq, and the way that I had started using it and just messing around with it caused me to realize that maybe some of my workflows in Obsidian needed to be a little bit more granular or a little bit more block linked. And so I just started experimenting with that a little bit more. Zoltzgwin, I love Evernote. Been using it since 2009. I've tried them all. Notion, Craft, Obsidian, Bear, OneNote, but keep coming back to Evernote. And like I mentioned earlier in the stream, that's awesome. You know, one person might knock a software and say, I really don't like that at all. But to another person, that software is a home run because everybody's different. And so if Evernote's working for people, as in my mind, as long as that company is still investing in that software and doing a great job trying to build that software up as best as possible, then awesome. And if not, so be it, you know? One random question for y'all. Something interesting I've been noticing about YouTube. YouTube has really pigeonholed this channel into like Obsidian kind of content. And so anytime I post a video about Obsidian, even a live stream like this, it just gets served a lot more broadly than it does with something I'm posting a little less generally. And so what do you think about this? For these Think With Me Thursday videos, do you just want to... Are you all right if I just have more generic titles for it, or do you want to have like more specific titles about what we're talking about in these? Would love to get your input on that. Because if I just keep a generic title like noodling around in Obsidian or something like that, I mean, we're talking about tons of different stuff today, but it just kind of always comes back to Obsidian in a lot of regards, and it might just help more people discover the fun stuff that we're doing over here. All right, so Nicholas says, I think specific is nice, but more than Obsidian. Yeah, that's fair. Maybe I'll just throw some keywords in there. Metadata, right? Cool. Okay. Note taken then. I'm just interested to see. Oh, hi, Cosette. Hope you're having a great day. Evernote has changed a lot since I last used it. We have, I mean, a completely brand new interface here. Tasks seem to be a lot more refined, which is really cool. I mean, I really got to hand them that. I won't have audio for the video here, but I'll just take a look at it. Yeah, so it's doing a lot more organization and integration. I think they're feeling the pressure from Notion and other apps to try to keep up. So now they have to play catch up. It's weird to watch videos without sound because you have no idea what's going on. Google Calendar. Everybody wants the Google Calendar integration these days. Yeah, so personal, $7.99, professional. Interesting. Unlimited devices. Primary Google Calendar account. Add reminders and due dates to your tasks. Task management. Search, yeah, OCR. Huh. That's a really odd feature to include in like a higher tier that you call out on the homepage. Use Boolean terms to refine search results. That just seems really weird to me. Like, search is so key to these applications. I can understand why they would do that, but why would you restrict using like a Boolean term, which is like an and or an or, to refine your search results? That just seems really weird. Like, oh, I'm paying $7.99 a month for personal, but I can't use the word and to have two different characteristics I'm trying to search for. That's a really odd restriction in my mind. Alex says, Craft replaced Evernote for me. I see it as a more attractive natural successor, at least for Mac-oriented folks. I keep hitting my mic cord over here, so sorry about that. That's kind of goofy. Behind on tasks, but sharing, creating web pages out of notes is amazing. Yeah, so since I last took a look at Craft, Craft I think has really refined their position in the marketplace. Create documents, make impact. Yeah. Oh, this is really neat. The bland look of Google Docs to the fancy, attractive look of Craft. That's interesting. And so this is their new web interface, isn't it? Where you can use it on the web. I like that. Build documents. Alex, do you know, can Craft take uploads? Does it do OCR or anything like that? Zolt's going. That's exactly why I don't like Notion for taking notes. It feels more like documents. Same thing with Craft too. You're kind of crafting something in there versus flashing it out or fleshing it out. Okay, thanks for that. It does an OCR. Okay. OCR note file app. Let's try this. All right. My go-to. You have a shortcut for quick OCR is how you get around the issue. Okay, how does that work, Alex? Can you explain that a little bit? Do you OCR it? You OCR it outside of Craft, and then if you pop an OCR document in there, does it still search it? Yeah, I keep seeing Joplin. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering too, Zolt's going if there's anybody outside of Evernote and Devon think that do this. Paperless NG. Yeah, it looks like you might have to roll your own. Self-hosted. Yeah, this Reddit is very tech heavy. But yes, Devon Think is probably the best alternative to file management that I can find. That's not. Is that what I wanted to do? Yes. Okay. Quora. Oh, how I love and hate Quora. Oh yeah, I suppose OneNote does search OCR, but OneNote's so goofy with documents. Like Evernote, I feel like is kind of halfway in between Devon Think and OneNote. Like OneNote, you got to plop documents inside of a note. It just feels weird. Evernote, you can just upload a document and it's in a note, but you still basically treat it like a document. And then Devon Think is just your OCRing and indexing those documents. Snaplight. Okay. What's that? Yeah, that's not not it. Snaplight app. Let's try that. Okay. Photo highlighter. Nope, not what I want. Related. No. PC magazine. Probably not helpful. Yep, they're recommending OneNote. Joplin, but that doesn't do OCR. Yeah, Bear doesn't do it either. Notion doesn't do it. I've gone through this this before. Yeah, Nicholas, I have a scan snap myself. It's super nice to be able to do it, though I've really gotten off the habit of trying to do that on a regular basis. I have, what you don't see in the office, a nice clean office over here. What you don't see just past the camera is a third desk over here that is covered with a printer, a scan snap scanner, and boxes of paper. That's my life. that's my life. And the drum set, yes. Nicholas has been over. He's seen it. I've got a drum set over here. It's kind of also a spare bedroom as well. And I have a whiteboard and a guitar amp and some guitars and things like that. So it's not all just mess. Okay. All right. Yeah, so I guess to round out this discussion on Evernote, okay, I'm gonna pop back in here real quick. Two things, and then Zolt, go in. I'll get back to your question here in just a moment. I wanted to look at one thing here. Paperless NG. What is this? Oh, paperless is a Django application. Woohoo. Okay. So this is a self-hosted app if you wanted to do that. Looks like it's probably okay. Might be a little kludgy because it's an open source self-hosted app. Yeah, there really is not quite anything like Evernote, as this Gentle Foxes user says 2 years ago. And the downside too is that just about anything that's out there doesn't really fit the bill for a lot of what Evernote does. And then the other side of it too is that so many of these startup apps, they get acquired or they go away. So yeah, I don't know. Something to think about anyway. Solgawin is asking, oh, I forgot to flip over to this. Oh well, sorry. What kind of flow do you guys have when a project goes from being a personal to a team project? That's a really great question. So I really actually haven't had to deal with this too much myself. So I'm just going to speak to this out of theoreticals in my mind right now. One of the things that you have to do when you bring a team into a project is that they have to have all the information available to them. Who's assigned to what? What's the objective of the project? What's been done on it already? Because if you have a personal project that turns into a team project, then there's definitely a history there already. And so there's a bit of communication that has to happen in that process. You have to bring people in on it. Having a history of what's been done is really helpful for this, so you don't have to scrounge it up yourself or try to remember. So even using a teamwork tool like Notion or something like that to manage that project first and then bring people into it can allow there to be a bit of a history, especially if you've taken notes or written things down in the process. We did this at Discourse a lot when I was working there, where like maybe I would work on a project or someone else would work on a project and then it would get handed off to someone new. But because we had a whole discussion topic where we were hashing out the details of it in public. There were, for software engineering projects, there were Git commits and history there where people could see what had been done. And then there was just a simple handoff usually of, hey, this is where things are at right now and what needs to be done next. But then there's a whole distinctive history on what's there. And so there has to be some communication from the beginning, the inception of the project to where it's at right now when bringing team members on. The other thing is that roles need to be clear. So if you're leading the project now, not being the sole person executing it though, what your responsibilities from your team members need to be clear. And so if you use something like Todoist or even Notion, making sure that either sub-projects or tasks are handed out. I'm a big believer in the mindset of delegating projects instead of tasks. You're basically saying to someone, here's an outcome that we need to achieve. Go get it done. Versus saying, here's this one thing that I need accomplished. Can you check the box off? It just is a subtle difference in being able to handle delegation, but it gives a little bit more autonomy in the process. And so that's kind of what I would do is first really focus on making sure there's a history communicated. People understand where it's at, where it's been, what the end result is. And then also look to make sure that responsibilities are delegated appropriately. And then lastly, give a channel where people can share updates on that. Depending on your style for bringing people in on projects, you might want a regular check-in where you say, hey, every Friday, we're just going to share briefly on what the status of your piece of the project is. Or maybe you just do it asynchronously and have people update when they have something to share. Those three things I would really boil down to like how you would bring a team into a project. And hey, by the way, since we're midstream here right now, I would definitely recommend, if you haven't already and you've found value out of this, to hit the like button. That'll help other people find this stream, and it will help them basically find all the awesome resources that we have here too at Effective. So be sure to hit that like button before the end of today's stream. That would be really awesome if you found it helpful. So back to the Evernote thing. Honestly, I've been kind of toying with that. Like that whole idea of Evernote has been interesting to me again, just because of the challenges that I've had getting things scanned into DevonThink and doing it in an encrypted way too. I might start doing that instead of doing it in Dropbox. I might start doing it inside of iCloud Drive because I pay for both. I need the extra space. I have a tier of iCloud Drive, plenty of space there because we needed it for photos. But then I also pay for Dropbox in my business just because it's easier to interact with people using Dropbox. So I might move it out of Dropbox and put it in iCloud Drive because that's easier to share with my wife, and then I can just index that. But again, the whole challenge of putting like financial documents and things like that in a service is how secure is it? You know, if somebody compromises my iCloud account or my Dropbox account, do I really want them to have access to like my entire history of finances or, you know, medical bills and things like that? Like, I mean, it's in one scheme of things, it's like not huge, but in another scheme of things, like it's a huge amount of identity theft potential, for one. So I wrestle with that, you know, I wrestle with it. But then you put encryption in the mix using DevonThink, you put encryption in the mix using something like Cryptomator, and then you add a lot of complexity. So if someone needs to get access to it on the fly and I don't have it available with me to be able to do that, say like if I'm traveling or something and unavailable and someone needs a file in a short term, it can get really tricky to get access to it unless everybody has all the knowledge. Anyway, so I'm really not sure. Not sure what to do with it. It's a tricky tricky problem to have. I think everybody has done everything that Evernote does better, except for the file management and OCR. Hands down. I really think so. Yeah, Nicholas, it can be just exhausting to think about changing out of Evernote. I guess I would ask you, Nicholas, what are the reasons that you want to leave Evernote? Is it just you're kind of sick of it? Is it not working well? Is there a concern that you have with it? I'd love to hear more about that from you. Slow good win. Don't change, bro. Just embrace it. I love that. You know what? Who might? Okay, some of the same reasons, just lack of moving forward as a software. You know who might have an idea here? Tom Solid. He's kind of the paperless guy. So, let's see. Document management. More like notes. Someone was recommending me the other day to try out the Remarkable tablet, Remarkable 2. I think that's a really interesting thing, by the way. The one thing that I really can't get over it, though, is that if you want to be able to get those drawings off of the tablet and somewhere else, you've got to pay a subscription fee for it. So it's not good enough to just be able to pay the $200 some or whatever for the device, plus the cost of the pen, or whatever it is altogether. I can't remember off the top of my head, actually. But yeah, so I don't know. I was just really bummed to hear that. I know older users of it, they got grandfathered in and don't need that. Okay, so this isn't filtering at all. It's kind of weird. Is it just like highlighting them? Okay. There we go. Maybe. They seem like older articles too. Maybe not up to date. There has to be something out there that's done this just as well. I'm just looking at this because I'm not sure. Meister Note, Meister Task, Meister MindMeister. Yeah, probably not. I can imagine too getting stuff out of Evernote would be really challenging as well if you have multiple, like many years of data in there, PDFs and things like that. And be able to import it in somewhere else is going to be real tough to do. just because of the way that Evernote has structured their data, it's not all that portable. That is the one thing that I do like about, or one thing I like about DevonThink is that you can handle things in one of two ways. You can put them in a DevonThink database, or you can take a folder on your file system and index it in DevonThink. Either way, you really just have DevonThink, and you have the files that are just in a container somewhere. So in the database, all you got to do is drag the files out of DevonThink, and they're out of DevonThink. And if they're in the index, they're already outside of DevonThink, but DevonThink is just watching that folder, or if they're indexed from a folder, rather. So it's a really powerful way to do things. But again, one of the main downsides of it is the cost. And then additionally, the fact that it's limited to iOS and macOS only. True, Alex. Yeah, Apple Notes, OCRs, things. I think the trick with there is that I just find Apple Notes so hard to organize, but it might be something worth trying to look at. Oh boy, that seems really intense. That is true. I wonder if you could hack a system like this in Zotero. It doesn't use necessarily OCR. I'm interested in seeing what PDF to text does. Not what I wanted. That might be worth exploring at some point too, is if you can use something like Zotero for that. But I don't know if you have to have them OCR'd first. But again, yeah, it's all the sync stuff that really becomes the challenge there. Secure syncing. Layer cutter. Not always going to be the best choices on here for stuff like this. Yeah. Nope. The other thing that I've been trying to figure out too, as far as like document storage goes, this kind of gets into more like household management stuff. I've been trying to figure a lot of this out. I haven't really been very fruitful with it, but is like recipes. I like Paprika is the recipe manager that everybody uses, but I don't know. It's kind of goofy too. It'd just be great to have something. I don't know. In my ideal world, I could store all of my recipes digitally and then just pull a paper copy out whenever I wanted one. Yes, you can do that just by printing them, but I don't want to have to print a bunch of recipes. Let's put it that way. Um, but if I could just have one nice place to organize recipes that makes sense in context of a lot of other things, instead of having it just in one siloed app, it would be great. That was one thing too that Evernote did pretty well. Just interested to see how people are doing this. Pit Mela? What's that? It's old school in. Check out Mela. Mela. Is that must be an app? Ah, recipe manager. Okay. Cool. Oh yeah, that looks a lot nicer than Paprika. Paprika feels just really old to me these days. I'll take a look at that one. Oh, wait, is this made by the same guy who makes Reader? That's cool. I haven't heard of this one before, so. Yeah, Reader has been like kind of the app for reading feeds in like if you don't have like some other feed app. Yeah, Sylvia Rizzi. $9.99 for the Mac app. And I'm guessing $2.99? $4.99. Yeah. I mean, $15 for those apps? That's pretty good. It's cheaper, I think, than what Paprika is. I like this. You can subscribe to recipe blogs, cook mode, timers. Hey, that's really handy too. Scan in recipes from books. I have lots of cookbooks as well. Reminders app for grocery lists. Really handy there too. That, you know what? This may very well be the thing that I want to take a look at here, because you can do meal planning, but it's managed by your system calendars. It's not outside of your system calendars, and so it syncs across all your devices if you're using iCloud or whatever your calendar you're using. That is really, really smart, I will say. Really smart. And it's all local on your device, synced with iCloud, which is great. Super good design too. Yeah. So my wife and I, we use Apple reminders for our grocery lists just because it's really easy to share them between us, and our calendar too. So I mean, if we were able to build a calendar and meal plan type of thing with this, that's awesome. Yeah, this guy, he's thinking. I'm definitely going to add that to my list of things to check out, because I was considering trying to do something like that in Notion, but because this integrates with the tooling that we already use in our house, it makes a heck of a lot more sense to do. I wonder how easy it is to import from Paprika. But great, you can save as PDF too. That's really fun. Super fun. Also probably one of the longest streams that we've run on the channel here, but that's all right. This has been fun today. Thanks everybody for the discussions. A couple things wrapping up today. One, if there's any more questions, by the way, just pop them in the chat. I'm willing to hang around for a little while and talk if you want to. Cooling the poll here. I'm going to end it just now. From 19 people who have voted. So just at the beginning of the stream, I asked, what types of content do you find most helpful on our channel? PKM, productivity tips, app tutorials, or all of it? 42% of you said all of it. PKM, productivity, and app tutorials. Okay, awesome. That's kind of what my gut was saying. Same thing with PKM, 36%. And then productivity tips at 21%. This just kind of gives me a good baseline, because if y'all are joining these live streams and hanging around, you like hanging out on the channel, which I really appreciate. So thank you for that. And so this just helps me kind of gauge where I should spend my time making content. I mentioned last week that I've had some job decisions and interviews and things like that. One of the things that I'm really strongly considering right now is really ramping up Effective to try to make it my full-time income. I'm nowhere near the capacity to do that. So I know I'm going to have to do other things in the meantime. But one of the things I know I want to do is potentially start offering coaching and also some paid courses of my own and some paid products. There's a lot of stuff I got to sort out with sales tax and getting all the finances, and do I need to keep my current business structure to do that, or does it make sense to switch to something else before I go full steam ahead with that? Choosing course platforms and things like that too, it's another thing, because some of them make it a lot easier than others to actually make, like, pay tax and things like that. And so that's been on my mind. And so, all right, where was I going with that? I think I totally just lost my train of thought. That's the one thing that I've been looking at, is trying to build Effective into a more full-time income stream. And so I just want to thank you all for joining this stream, because that helps to hang out here, to learn a little bit more about what you're thinking about, to be able to answer your questions. And if you're interested in joining our weekly newsletter, do head on over to thinkeffective.co/join. Gets you access to, and of course, my Stream Deck button isn't going to work for that. I need to get this automated with Stream Elements. Just have this popping through every once in a while. But head on over to thinkeffective.co/join to sign up for our free membership. It gets you our weekly-ish newsletter called Toolbox Tips, condensed productivity advice available for you in a library, both publicly and in your email inbox if you want it there. And then it also gets you access to all of our free guides. Would love to have you join the newsletter, to join the membership there. And plus, if I'm opening up coaching slots, that'll be the first place that we'll hear about it. And so I would love to hear from you there on that as well. And I would love to have you as one of my coaching people, because I'm not sure what to call them right now. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit more in the near future. But yeah, there's been a lot of stuff going on in that realm of things. And so anyway, without any further questions, comments today, the discussion today was fantastic. I loved digging into Evernote and Obsidian and Notion and why you would choose those, and looking at MEM. And the conversation we all had, I think, was really helpful today too. And thanks for the recommendations, Zolkowin, on Mela for that. You probably got another purchaser of that app. So maybe I'll do a review of that on the channel, because I think that's very related to PKM, because recipes and meal planning, that's all part of it, right? But anyway, I think we're going to wrap up the stream today. Thanks again for joining. One last thing, if you're not a channel member already, feel free to hit the join button down below, and you can support what we're doing there as well. My name is Justin with Effective. I am looking forward to the next one of these. I'll have to look at my schedule next week. I think Thursday is open, so be watching for it here on YouTube. But in the meantime, stay effective. Thanks, everybody.